One of the most common questions I get is, Nikachu, how do I get into Modern? Like, what is the best, most cheapest deck I can buy so I can get into the format? Which is really funny because inside Modern, everyone is like, oh my god, Modern, what is Wizards doing? This format, where is it go? This isn't what it used to be. But outside of Modern, everyone is like, I want to play Modern. How do I get a deck? I want to buy into Modern, but the fetch lands, oh my god, the mana bases are so expensive. So today I'm going to offer you 5 really good budget options that are really powerful in Modern. Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and I offer competitive Merfolk advice, but sometimes I do videos like this where I just give valuable magic advice. So if that is something that you're interested in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Oh, and now I am a streamer! So if you want to check out my streams, go check out the description below. So I know mana bases are like super harsh in Modern, but I've discovered that there are some really good playable decks that if you've made just some tiny adjustments, especially to their mana bases, they're basically the same deck. And yes, you're going to water it down a little bit, but you're going to have like 80 to 90% of what makes those Modern decks a deck in the first place, and I'd love to share it with you today. Don't worry about writing any of the deck lists down. I'm going to have all of them in the description below. But before we get into our top 5, I'd love to give an honorable mention to Infect. I'd love to give an honorable mention to Infect because on the surface, it actually looks like it's incredibly budget. I mean, you look at all these cards, they're incredibly cheap. And so, okay, Noble Hierarch. Maybe you don't need Noble Hierarch. You can replace this thing with Gilded Goose or something like that, given that it's $118 here. But then you move, you see the other side of the story. Oh my god, look at this mana base. And then you're like, well, the hell with this. I'm not going to play with this deck at all. So if you can find out how to make Infect the mana base on a budget, this looks like a prime deck to play on a budget in Modern, given that the core of the deck, the pump spells, the creatures are so cheap. And even if you had to spend the $60 on the Ink Moth, it'd be really good. Just to let everyone know though, for $200 you can actually get this thing online, so it's actually really reasonable to buy in online. Just so that I don't look too biased, let's start off with number 5, Modern Merfolk. Now, the deck is incredibly budget. You can have all the core cards like Lord of Atlantis, Master of the Pearl Trident, Merfolk, Silvergill Adept, Master of Waves, incredibly affordably. Almost none of these cards cost a lot of money. Nothing is even over $5. Most of the cost from Modern Merfolk comes from Ether Vial, Cavern of Souls, and Chalice of the Void, if you even opt to play those cards. But without them, and you most definitely can play without them, the deck can be, for paper, around a little over $100, and online it can be as cheap as $50. We've made some adjustments to the mana base. We're not going to be playing with Mutavault. We play with Fairy Conclave. Fairy Conclave is basically a creature land that you can activate for 2 mana, and it has evasion, built-in evasion, because it's a 2/1 flying fairy. And the deck has all the regular synergies. You can go turn 1 Benthic Biomancer, turn 2 Lord of Atlantis, turn 3 Merfolk, and then follow it up with another Lord for 20 damage. You can back that up with all the normal disruption that Merfolk is known for. Things like Deprive, which is a really good counterspell countering anything in the format, and also Spreading Seas, which locks down Tron lands, takes people off of their colored lands. Jund hates this card. They absolutely hate Spreading Seas. Merfolk doesn't use the graveyard, so they can utilize cards like Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, and Damping Sphere can also help further the hate against the land card, like the land decks like Amulet or Eldrazi Tron or even regular Tron. There's a lot of red decks out there like Burn, Mono Red, Prowess, and even green decks like the red-green aggro Ponza deck, and for that we've got Tidebinder Mage. For 2 mana, a 2/2 creature, when it enters the battlefield, lock down a red or green creature. It does not untap during their untap step, so long as you control Tidebinder Mage. Another really popular card in the Merfolk deck right now is Force of Negation, because you can play this card for free. And one of the best decks to be playing Force Negation against is actually control decks playing with Planeswalkers. You can replace that, however, with Mystical Dispute. For 1 mana, you are very likely to still counter Teferi Time Reveler. You can counter cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, Teferi Hero of Dominaria. You can even start countering their other cards like Icefang Quaddle, Snapcaster Mage, and even Uro. So Mystical Dispute is a very good replacement card for Force of Negation in today's modern metagame. So coming in at number 4 is Gifts Storm. I think this deck not only is really affordable, but it is incredibly powerful. If your opponent doesn't interact with you, they're basically dead. Once the combo starts going, you're a goner. The chain that Storm sets up is incredibly difficult to interact with. Once it gets going, you can't stop it. You start off with like a Baral or Goblin Electromancer, and ideally you're going to use enough rituals so that you can Gifts Ungiven for Past in Flames. Amongst more rituals, you're going to Past in Flames and eventually set up enough chain of spells in the same turn so that you grape shot your opponent to death. Storm has been so powerful over Modern's history that it has seen many cards banned from it, like Preordain, Ponder, Seething Song, and Gitaxian Probe. So this deck is incredibly affordable because there are versions that do not run fetch lands, which allow you to save a lot of money when buying into this deck in Modern. And I would just say that this deck is very, very powerful, but I will just warn you with the caveat that the one issue with Modern Storm is that there are so many hate cards for it. Storm gets shut down by like graveyard hate or anything that prevents you from playing multiple spells a turn. So things like Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, Soul Guide Lantern, Rest in Peace for the graveyard. And then if you talk about spells, there's like Rule of Law effects. We now have Damping Sphere, preventing you from playing too many spells a turn. Chalice of the Void. So there are so many hate cards against the Storm deck that this deck will only be really well positioned if people are not running them. But if they aren't, this is an incredibly powerful proactive deck that is really good for grinding ticks online or playing at your FNM. So coming in at number 3 is Eldrazi-tron. Now, Eldrazi-tron has some incredibly expensive pieces in it, things like Walking Ballista, things like Chalice of the Void, and also cards like Cavern of Souls. But I think if you take those cards out of the equation, you still have an incredibly strong, proactive, powerful deck that still utilizes a lot of what makes Eldrazi-tron win in Modern. So if I just take out things like Walking Ballista, and replace it with things like Endless One as my mana sink. So if I've got 10 mana, I'll sink it all into an Endless One and have a gigantic creature. And we can still be proactive with things like Eldrazi Mimic on turn 1 and start attacking for some serious damage. I mean, if we go double Temple, we can play Thought-Knot Seer, attack for 4 damage on turn 2, and then follow that up Reality Smasher on turn 3. So it can still have some incredibly busted strong starts. Eldrazi Mimic, copying the other big Eldrazi, including Endless Ones, is going to give you a really good proactive plan against a lot of decks in Modern. But I'm not throwing away the Karn the Great Creator package, alright? It's alright, so we're gonna afford 1 Walking Ballista here. We can at least fetch for 1 in our sideboard, along with the rest of the sideboard package that we usually see from Eldrazi-tron with Tormod's Crypt, Grafdigger's Cage, Pithing Needle, Relic of Progenitus, Liquid Metal Coating to destroy everything that's on your opponent's battlefield. You turn things into artifact, you turn the lands into artifacts, and you plus Karn, and you just basically wipe the thing off the battlefield, because until end of turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to the converted mana cost. The lands have no converted mana cost, so it just dies. Most importantly, you can fetch Ensnaring Bridge, basically locking down any deck that's trying to win with creatures. So this deck still utilizes all the regular lands. Okay, we don't have Cavern of Souls for uncounterable creatures, but still, we can just replace that with other random lands like Scavenger Grounds to help hit graveyard decks, and also Tectonic Edge, which is going to play a little bit of a part in any deck that requires a lot of mana if a control deck goes up to 4 lands, we're going to chew them away and keep them off their precious mana sources, but we still have the we still have the Tron lands with Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Tower, still utilizing massive mana advantage against most decks in Modern. So I think this deck obviously is going to be weaker than the normal Eldrazi Tron deck, but it's still going to have enough power for you to compete in Modern. And keep in mind, like, this is the most expensive of all the budget decks I'm proposing. In paper, it's $258. Online, it's $233. But just keep in mind that if you were to even buy into Standard, the decks are as expensive or more expensive. Here we got Jund Sacrifice at $300, Temur Reclamation $447, Azorius Control $250, Gruul Midrange $215, Temur Adventures $300, a little over $200 for Rakdos Lurrus, Asper Control $333, Bant Ramp almost $600, Sultai Midrange $600. So tell me, do you want to invest up to $600 for a standard deck that's going to rotate out? Or how about you invest in a budget Modern deck that you can slowly upgrade over time into a full-fledged Modern deck for around $250. You tell me what you want to do. So coming in at number 2 is Modern Burn. Now, of course, Modern Burn, I mean, all it is a bunch of burn spells, but most of the cost of a burn deck is actually going to come from the mana base, the shock lands, the horizon lands, the fetch lands. So why play with any of those lands when you can just play with mountains? So the downside is burn in Modern generally is a Boros deck. They utilize things like Lightning Helix, which is great in a lot of tempo matchups because you can deal damage while gaining some life. Huge tempo swing. Boros Charm, which is 4 damage, for 2 mana, but also has other modes like making your creatures in play indestructible. And they utilize really good sideboard cards like Path to Exile, Rest in Peace, and Core Firewalker. But you know what? If we just take out those white cards, find some good replacements, and just play with 20 mountains, we're going to cut a huge chunk of the cost of the deck down so that it is affordable for you to get into Modern, because it still has everything that makes a burn deck a burn deck. You have your Goblin Guide, the 2/2 haste creature from turn 1, which, by the way, also takes a peek at your opponent's library. People don't recognize that advantage out of Goblin Guide. Yes, sometimes you give them a land, but when you don't, which is going to be 2 out of 3 times, you actually gain an information advantage with Goblin Guide. Monastery Swiftspear, a card that sees play in basically any deck that can abuse Prowess. You better believe that burn can do it. And Eidolon of the Great Revel, 2/2 creature. Combo decks hate this. Any deck that's trying to rattle off a million spells absolutely hates Eidolon of the Great Revel. So we've got all our normal cards. We can play with Riftbolt, a full play set of Skullcrack, Searing Blaze, which will be a little weaker in this version of the deck because we're not playing with fetch lands, because when you have fetch lands, you can fetch on your opponent's turn to activate Landfall to get the Searing Blaze ability off. Even without that, I think Searing Blaze is still worth it. You can still run it. You just have to do it at your main phase basically all the time. Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, and Skewer the Critics. Like, these are all staples of the burn deck. So the only new thing that we have here as a replacement are Burst Lightning. So this is going to be a 2. It's shock. It is shock. However, if you flood out to 4 mana, like to 4 or 5 mana, you can activate this thing for its kicker and deal 4 damage instead. So it is this is basically in some way our Boros Charm replacement. We have 4 damage packed into 1 spell, but we do have the option of playing it for 1 mana when we need to. And the only cost is that we have to play with mountains. That's it. That's it. All we have to do is play with mountains. Okay, we don't have Rest in Peace, but we've got Grafdigger's Cage. Pretty good replacement. We don't have Core Firewalker to gain life, but we can use Dragon's Claw to do the exact same thing. We don't have Path to Exile. That's okay, we can run Dismember. It's all good. So if there's a big beefy creature that we need to remove off the battlefield, Dismember generally deals with a lot of those creatures. And for artifacts, we still have Smash to Smithereens, and also we have Bone Crusher Giant just as an extra creature, and extra way of making sure that our opponents cannot prevent damage next turn. So against the opposing Core Firewalkers, we are ready. So I think this is a fantastic way of getting into Modern, because you basically have the entire deck. You just have to upgrade with the white splash over time as you get the cards. So coming in at number 1, the best, most powerful deck that you can play on a budget in Modern is Mono Red Prowess. This deck is already one of the single best decks in Modern, and the only things we took out were some Horizon lands and also Magus of the Moon in the sideboard. And boom, you've got an incredibly powerful and budget deck. I didn't touch anything else. Look, you have the exact same core creature suite: Swift Spear, Soul Scar Mage, Kiln Fiend, Bedlam Reveler. This is your Prowess team, where as you cast spells, everything is going to get bigger. Kiln Fiend being an honorable Prowess creature. And you've got all the spells: Burst Lightning, Crash Through, give your gigantic Prowess creatures trample and keep cycling, finding more cards. Lava Dart, snipe down those 1 toughness creatures. You get to play it twice, sacrificing a mountain, making all your Prowess creatures even larger. Lava Spike, Lightning Bolt. Probably the most expensive card in here is Manamorphose. What are we at? $30 for a playset of Manamorphose. And light up the stage so that you can keep the gas coming while also activating a lot of Prowess triggers. The main deck's untouched. So you basically have a tier 1 main deck with the minus like some Horizon lands, but basically you've got the whole deck right here. That's what makes this probably the best, most powerful deck to get into Modern right now on a budget, because you have the full power. You didn't water down anything else. You have the full power of Mono Red Prowess, just without the Horizon lands. And the only other okay, we don't have Magus of the Moon for things like Tron and stuff. Let's play with Alpine Moon. Why not? It's a budget replacement. Why not? So if you have Magus of the Moon or Blood Moon, then you're golden. Then you're not watering down the deck almost anything at all. But aside from that, that's the only other adjustment. And the other regular cards you see in Mono Red Prowess: Grafdigger's Cage, Abrade, Dragon's Claw, Kozilek's Return, Saheeli, Sublime Artificer. This is a really good way to just get a bunch of tokens. It's like a young Pyromancer on a Planeswalker. So you just make a bunch of tokens off of every spell that you possibly cast. But what makes this deck really so damn good is that it is the entire tier 1 Mono Red Prowess deck. This is like one of the most powerful decks in Modern as it is right now, and it doesn't get watered down, but very much in budget form. I mean, you just lose a bit of lands, but you have the core cards in this deck the entire way, and so cheap. For paper, $113. Online, $60. You have no excuse for not getting into Modern. If you want to get into Modern on a budget, you really like these sort of aggro creature decks, this is like an aggro deck that sometimes feels like it combos off, like a Storm deck, and you just make it this gigantic board and attack your opponent for like 40. It is a really explosive, powerful aggro deck. If they don't kill your creatures, you better believe Kiln Fiend is going to attack for like 20 power. You better believe that it can do that. A few Manamorphoses, a few Lava Darts, a Crash Through away, and boom, your opponent's smacked to hell. So anyway, this I believe is the number 1 deck that people should be buying into on a budget in Modern. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to give a like. And also, do you know somebody who's trying to get into Modern on a budget? Maybe you could actually share this with them. So that's my video of my top 5 decks I think you can buy in on a budget that you can slowly upgrade over time. This has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and I'll see you next time.